but none of them likes being a middle engine.
When the Thomas fandom saw that the diecast and motorized line was being revamped in this new classic style, we all thought this was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool. And as it is, it's perfectly fine. But what if it could be better? Let's look at the model. Now, I've posted videos and photos of this Thomas onto my Twitter account, and quite recently I posted it onto my community tab on YouTube, asking if people would like to see this model and how it was made. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, we'd love to know how this was made. So, this video is for everyone who had questions about my custom 2025 motorized Thomas. Now, what's so special about this Thomas? Well, for a start, he's painted up completely. I do want to point out that this Thomas is this Thomas, right? It's the 2-pack version of Thomas without the painted running board. And I chose that version specifically because I didn't want this weird detail that the 3-pack versions seem to have. I still don't know what it is. I don't think anyone knows what it is. So, I chose the 2-pack Thomas and decided to completely tear it apart. And by tear it apart, I mean right down to its individual pieces. Now, the first thing I did to this Thomas was I replaced both the driving wheels and the front wheels with Tomy wheels. This is just so that it can run better on my layout and improve the traction and its pulling power, which it does very well. Along with swapping the wheels, I've also shaved down this little activation tab. This part of the chassis here is mostly used for the stop rails, so just shave it down a bit and it'll clear the track, no problem. What else did I do to Thomas? Well, I painted the running board fully. As you know, the 2-pack version doesn't have a painted running board, so I painted it fully all the way around. As you can see, my Thomas does have some weathering on him. I mostly did that because I like my trains to look like they've been doing stuff, That's how real trains are. On both the front and back, Thomas has little brake pipes. These are just made from bobby pins, or hairpins I suppose you call them, and yeah, they look the part. I also, on the back, have painted Thomas's lamp, and his coal bunker is very dirty, very weathered. Speaking of the coal bunker has real coal inside it. Now, it does look a bit strange on camera at the moment. That's because just before filming this video, I applied the coal, so it's still got wet glue and is still drying, but it's going to look so good when it's finally dry. Oh yeah, I added a front coupling. Sort of took inspiration from like the Ertl toys where they had a female coupling on either end, and so far that's actually proved to be quite well in terms of shunting. This coupling method seems to keep trucks on the track when they're shunting. And going both backwards and forwards, the train stays connected and on the track. And yes, you heard me right. I did just say backwards and forwards, because not only does this Thomas have added detail, it also has an added RC unit. How cool is that? That is, I can't believe I managed to figure this out. Now, the way that Thomas is RC'd, both the remote control chip inside of Thomas, as well as this controller, which I've stuck a little Thomas sticker on to indicate that it's his controller, they both come from what I call, and a lot of other people call, Coke can RC cars. They can very easily be found on websites like Amazon and AliExpress, and they're quite cheap as well. So yeah, I basically bought one of these Coke can RC cars, took it apart completely, took out the RC chip and disconnected it from the motor, and I replaced the battery for one, better performance and rechargeability, of which, fun fact, the battery I use in this Thomas comes from an old vape of mine. And something else that I added maybe only a couple of days ago as of this recording, of which I also showed off on my Twitter, you might have noticed that Thomas doesn't actually have his switch. That is because the RC chip actually has its own on-off switch. So the actual on-off switch for the train wasn't actually needed. However, if you do look at the roof, you can see a small button. What does this button do? Not only did I RC my Thomas, I can also make my Thomas whistle and talk.
Hello, I'm Thomas. I'm the #1 blue engine. I'm a really useful engine. Bust my buffers.
Now, if those voice lines and that sound chip sound familiar to anyone out there, that is because inside the cab and inside the roof here is basically the guts of a take and play talking Thomas. Now, for those of you who don't like Thomas diecast gore, look away now. Essentially, a talking take and play Thomas died for this Thomas. Now, if Mattel had given us something like this, how awesome would that be? A remote control talking Thomas that looks accurate. I'm pretty sure Mattel would make huge money with something like this. You know, they've already done a talking Thomas, and the cab is oversized to accommodate the talking feature as well as the motor. But here is the standard 2-pack Thomas with RC functionality and talking functionality. Now, Mattel, hire me. I can make your toys for you. This is sick. I am absolutely amazed that I managed to even do this. This is now my favorite custom I have ever worked on and ever made. I am so happy with this Thomas.
Hello, I'm Thomas.
Hello, Thomas. Right, I'm going to do my best job now to show you the inside of Thomas. So, my Thomas does not open traditionally by taking the chassis off. That all stays together as one piece. Instead, the way to open my Thomas is this extra screw at the front. So that gets undone. That is connected to the smoke box here. That has now been released. Next, we take off the roof. Now here's a look at the inside of the roof. There is our little battery compartment from the Take and Play Thomas, the speaker, and even the little mechanism that makes the chuffing sounds. I had to pretty much hollow out the roof section to accommodate everything in there. It only all just stuffs in there nicely where it's all fitting. Like I could not stuff anything else in this Thomas if I tried. So yeah, the roof piece comes off as a separate thing. There's the inside of the cab. You can see it's been completely hollowed out, and you can actually see both the RC chip and the battery there. There's a little plug here which allows me to disconnect the battery from the circuit board in order to recharge it. Next, we unscrew these two screws at the back of the cab. These are what are holding the body shell onto the footplate, because this Thomas essentially comes apart like a traditional Tomy Thomas. It comes apart from the footplate there. Just before we look at that, there is the inside of Thomas's shell. It's been hollowed out a little bit, but essentially everything fits in the tank and boiler area, literally only just. There was a lot of trial and error to this model. Here is the main core, the main guts of this Thomas. We've got the battery here, which, like I said, comes from an old vape of mine. The battery itself is 3.7 volts, and I've learnt that this chip needs at least 3 volts in order to power everything. Yeah, the battery is just connected to the board there. There's the little aerial, and the forward and backwards motion is just hooked up to the board and soldered onto the negative and positive terminals up here. Now, because the chip has its own battery, there's no need for the switch, so that's just been cut away completely. But yes, that is the inside of my RC Thomas. I'll grab the controller again just to prove it. You can see there the little light on the circuit board lighting up whenever I press a button. I'm speechless. A Coke can RC car can power the 2025 motorised Thomas line. How cool is that? It's time to put Thomas back together, and it's literally just a reverse of what we just did. So the body shell goes over the top like that, screw down the cab to the running board, and then we tighten the screw down here for the smoke box, and then finally the roof piece with the battery and speaker just goes on like that, and there we have it, folks. We have a talking RC Thomas.
I'm the #1 blue engine.
Yes, you are, Thomas.